Good morning and welcome to the Township of Woolwich Special Council Budget Meeting on January 25th, 2024. We welcome, everyone attending in person, which is staff at the moment, or if you're watching via our YouTube channel. This morning, we'll be focusing on any outstanding operating items, capital budgets, plus we'll have a closed session heading into lunch break, and then we're back for an afternoon session. So I'll start with a roll call of council. I'm Mayor Shantz and present and chairing this meeting. Councillor Bryant. Present. Councillor Burgess.
Present.
Councillor Cadeau.
Present.
Councillor Grant.
Present.
Councillor Schwint.
Present.
Thank you. The land on which we meet has been here from time immemorial, and people have inhabited Southern Ontario for time immemorial. We recognize the Chinootan, Anishinaabeg, and Haudenosaunee people who lived here prior to and when the settlers arrived and who share this land with us. May we together learn to care for and respect each other, our flora and fauna, and the land that sustains us. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest? Seeing none, we will start with any outstanding items from I'm going to call on Jeff to present the council budget because we kind of skipped over that on Tuesday.
Thank you, Mayor Shantz. My apologies. I should have shared this yesterday with you all. Short presentation here for you on the council budget. It's coming up on your screen. Under the council budget, there's really three things I wanted to highlight for you. The training and development budget has increased by $3,500. If you look at the actuals from 2023, they were low compared to previous years because much of the orientation training that we provide for you was paid from the election budget. Meeting expenses, there's been a $2,000 increase. We didn't properly budget for our in-person meetings, so we've done that for this year. And then collaboration initiatives, there's actually no net increase to that. That was something that was contained in other budgets and we brought it forward in council's budget. But there's a lot of things that council does to collaborate with other municipalities in the region, like the Community Wellbeing Survey, like the Reconciliation Action Partnership, and those expenses then would be in your budget. So if there's any questions, I'd be happy to try to answer them for you. Of course, this is your budget, so it's up to you.
Questions, council? I think we've budgeted for a couple of conferences a year, Jeff, for three people.
We budgeted for 3 or 4 people to go to AMO this year, and then there is additional room if there's more conferences. As well, sorry, with AMO, if you want a staff member to go with you, that's in your budget as well.
That's in our, okay. Okay. Not seeing any questions, so thank you for that. Then we'll move right into the capital budget and we'll start with infrastructure services and call on Mr. Poupay.
Thank you, Mayor Shantz. And through you to members of council, good morning again for another full day of budget deliberations. We have before you here is the 2024 draft capital budget for the Infrastructure Services Department. I have Carter McGuire with me as well. And I think very interesting budget year. I think for the last 3 years, we've been able to say that this is the largest capital budget that the department has put forward. That is the same this year, just south of $30 million in the infrastructure services budget. A lot of challenges. I think in a nutshell, the needs are outpacing a lot of the revenue, as you can see the debentures in this year's budget. And we're going to obviously have some good discussion about some of that. And I think that's a highlight here is some of the concerns, obviously, from staff's perspective, is that we would be looking to debenture some of our roads and annual bridge program work. So it's a bit of a concern from staff's perspective, just not having enough resourcing in funding to support what we believe we need to accomplish to maintain our system adequacy on the road network and with our bridges. Breslau Drain 1 is an incredibly important project this year, and we're finally happy to have that move into construction. I think a lot of people have been waiting for that. It'll be bookended a bit with some of the development that's occurring out there with the Mad West subdivision that was recently draft approved. And that is just south of $6 million. So that is not an insignificant drain project. It's a very large drain project. We hope it garners some good interest from construction industry out there this year. And the township is responsible for about $2 million of that related to roads and public lands that we own. We're deferring Duke Street again. Simply put, there's just not enough staff resourcing nor funding available. It's not critical that has to happen this year, but I think it's something to note. We were in that same situation last year. We had to defer partly due to Church Street, but it was partly a resource issue as well. So I think with Church Street being done, our focus is going to be in Georgian High this year to get that done, and then we will need to be looking at Duke Street going forward. There is an error I want to highlight to council too for the 2025 budget. Duke Street is showing it to be about $3.55 million. It will be closer to $6 million. We don't have the exact, but it is a significant road. So that was my error. I just want to highlight that would be will change, and we'll reflect that moving forward too. Significant growth is a challenge. That's been a theme. Certainly with all that the province has been doing regarding the Countryside Line, with our approach to Breslau, the secondary planning processes that are happening there, and all the development potential, looking to do servicing out there. That takes a lot of time and energy, as council's well aware, and investment. And I think it's important to note that we are supportive of development. Development is important for community and community building. It's all about good development. And I think that's really what staff are focused on, is ensuring that the township receives good development. Development, we like to say, pays for itself. In reality, it really makes that first injection. And it's all about having that infrastructure installed properly and appropriately. As everyone is aware, then ratepayers typically pick up the ongoing maintenance and operational costs. So I think, with development services coupled with infrastructure services, rec and community services, we are all supportive of that and want to ensure that we get good development here in Woolwich, because that's important. And we can see there's cases around the province where there hasn't been appropriate attention to that initial install, and it costs a lot more money down the road. So we have our own examples in that area, and we want to ensure that we don't repeat, and we ensure that certainly with some of the work that's coming down the pipeline, so to speak, we ensure that is done adequately, properly, and we can look after that. So with that, I think that's the big picture. There's a number of debentures on the 2024 draft. I think I need to highlight as well that under the capital bridge and culvert program, we put our best foot forward with respect to what we envisioned Union Street and Oriole Parkway cost estimates to be. Unfortunately, after the budget was prepared, those costs came in much higher than anticipated. We were hoping to be able to at least fund Oriole Parkway of the two. So there's two culverts there that we're looking at here, both in disrepair. Oriole is probably the largest priority. And that's something we were looking to do a lining program with, as opposed to doing an open cut. There's still a benefit to doing that, although the costs have now kind of come close to what open cut work would be. But it's the It's not, it hasn't exceeded that, and we would still recommend to do sort of a lining program to support that culvert. There is a window there. So when we start talking through some of this, I think I can explain that we'd still be deficient as far as funding goes to support Oriole. But we'd be asking council to potentially move that project forward this year. If not, we will just have to do some ongoing monitoring. And we would definitely be looking to do that in 2025. I think that would be the last window of opportunity for potential lining. So what I will explain is on the $6.323 million shown in the Capital Bridge and Culvert Program, we are permitted through the DC background study to leverage 10% of capital bridges and programs through development charges. And that's what you see there. It's representing 10%. Cox Creek Road is an engineering project that it's less than 3 meters, so it would not be picked up in our biennial inspections through the Ontario Structural Inspection Manual. So we've come across that. That is a culvert that needs repair. So we were looking to do some engineering. However, there is not funding for that this year. So again, we are showing in this budget what needs to happen. And that's why we're showing debentures to look to support some of that work. But there is not funding outside of debentures available for that. Floridale Road replacement structure is something that is funded in this capital bridge and culvert program. That is the last bridge. If anybody's familiar with Floridale Road, the region had done their bridge a number of years ago. We've looked at 2 of those culverts ourselves and done that work as well. This is the last remaining bridge on that road, and it's quite a narrow structure with the way the guide rail is there. So we're looking at that as something that needs to happen. And then that Floridale Road corridor, basically from Listowel Road all the way up to Arthur, will be in really good shape, certainly from a culvert and bridge perspective. So that's an important project. It is funded here. We are looking to hit the street with a tender shortly, and we're hoping the council can support that work. Greenhouse Road did come before council last year. That was the tender was approved, and there was options in that tender to either do the work in 2023 or 2024. The awarded contractor elected to do the work this year. So that again is funded how it was proposed to council, which did come with debenture. That is shown in the note. There's about $720,000 of debenture funding for the Greenhouse Road Bridge, and the remaining would be coming out of the Infrastructure Reserve Fund. So that is a project that we are looking to move forward on. The low-level bridge, not many from council, certainly Mayor Shantz will likely recall, we ran into a bit of an issue with the low-level bridge. There was movement there. It was an emergency repair. We did get an injection from some upper government funding that we were able to tap into that allowed us to inject about $500,000 to do a somewhat of a Band-Aid repair, albeit it involved underwater work. It is holding. We are monitoring that bridge, and we spend about $10,000 annually to do investigations to make sure that it is not moving. It is an incredibly important connection, certainly for the Old Order community on Three Bridges Road there, and it's one that we want to maintain. The challenge, obviously, with the way the weather patterns are, it's closed fairly frequently with rain events. We're looking at opportunities to potentially lift that. It will always be what we deem to be a low-level bridge. There will always be water topping it, but I think we can do better to with a new project to hopefully elevate that bridge, make it more serviceable for the community through various weather. So that is something that we do have a window of opportunity here. What we were proposing in this year's budget was to begin a study to investigate opportunities around that structure, go through an EA process, community engagement, try to figure out what is the best approach at that location, that water crossing. But we don't think that it would be appropriate to remove it. We think we do have a bit of time. So if that study does not commence this year, we would need to commence in 2025. So I think that's important too. And there is no funding available outside of debentures for that study this year. Peel Street Bridge, that has been on here ever since the EA was determined to convert that to pedestrian only. We can see that cost has increased as it sits. Deterioration continues to occur while these bridges sit. Middlebrook is no different. I think through this OSM inspection, we were informed that we need to start entertaining netting beneath the bridge deck, as there is navigable water under there. It's an active canoe route, obviously, on those rivers, and we want to ensure that we are not having debris fall on anybody under there. So that, again, not critical right now. I think we're okay, but that's something that council needs to be aware of, that would probably cost maybe $100,000 or so to start netting some of that stuff. So again, these are not inexpensive bridges. They are very expensive, and they come with their own challenges. The cost has increased from last year, about $160,000, is about 2.75 million last year. We're around 2.91 million this year. And we won't truly know, obviously, until we get into tender. That can change, but that is where the engineer's estimate sits at. So that's something for council to be aware. And again, that is debenture funding. There's no funding available to execute on that bridge this year. Pine Creek Road, that's an EA process that we began a year ago. There is no money to carry it on. It is, I would say, a lower order priority. There's less than 300 cars a day. So it's something that we're monitoring. Again, there's no funding, unfortunately, available to move that study onward to see what we are going to do. Some of the options that we were looking at there was the potential, much like an EA, look at do nothing, do a removal and cul-de-sac the ends or replace the bridge. But most bridges are going to be anywhere between $8 to $1 million at least for a very small one. So, just to put that in perspective, and when we're balancing all of the needs, that'll be something that we'll have to wrestle with at a future year. But that's something that has started, but we are pausing. And then we just talked about Union and Oriole. Those had sort of cropped up mid-year last year. And again, we think Oriole is the higher priority. If we looked at what's contained in the Capital Bridge and Culvert Program, there would be we would need to debenture approximately $161,000 to facilitate Oriole, to do Floridale Road and Greenhouse Road. And it would be those three projects alone that could be funded, save and except for about $160,000. So again, if that's something that we are not going to move forward on, we will just continue to monitor, and just want council to be aware that, depending on what we see out there, we may be fine into 2025. But again, we would definitely be wanting to line that in 2025. If you let deterioration go so far, you miss that window for lining and you were forced to open cut. And again, we're very close to the numbers, so it's not like there's a huge difference. It's really the impact of traffic above from an open cut perspective versus a trenchless method. So that is, in a nutshell, the Capital Bridge and Culvert Program for 2025, or 4, sorry. Getting ahead of myself.
On, questions? Go ahead.
Couple ones. First on Floridale Road with, I guess, downtown Elmira reconstruction and bypasses being considered and all that. Is the region, the township considering at all making that a regional road from Floridale North, what I call the checkerboard?
Mm-hmm. Yes, through you, Mary Shantz, to Councillor Schwint. So those discussions are occurring. The region is working on an EA for the bypass. We had engaged the region previously outside of that with the stretch of Floridale between Listowel Road and Church Street for a potential upload to the region, just because there's continuity there. It does form a bit of a bypass on the west side of Elmira. So those discussions are happening in a short answer. It's been the township's position that regardless, that can take time. We need to do what we are supposed to do. We think that is a deficient structure, certainly from on the surface. It's very narrow. I don't think it's great for horse and buggy traffic, certainly in the winter, and you're trying to get cars by that. So, that's been our approach, is that we're just continuing to do what the right thing is, regardless of what that, if that does potentially become a regional corridor. I don't expect that's going to happen anytime in the next couple of years. So we feel that it's still important to make that investment in Floridale now.
Would they, just on that one, and then I'll get to Bonnie, would they consider, because I know we've had a whole lot of different discussions, a temporary truck route on that stretch of road, or to just get the trucks off the main street until such time as a more fulsome bypass could be built?
Right, and that's absolutely possible, and the real critical piece then is this bridge. It's load limited and narrow, so it's not really great for truck route. We can't endorse that right now. I think that's another important piece, that this bridge needs to be replaced, and at that point, it would be absolutely conducive for heavy truck route all the time, for sure.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Bryant.
Thank you. Through you to Jared. With your resurfacing candidates, how do you choose which ones you would resurface? I know you've got a list of them here. How do you determine which ones you would be doing?
Yeah, and through you, Mayor Shantz, to Councillor Bryant. So we do road need studies now called State of the Infrastructure with respect to roads. And that's really visual inspections. We base that on the inventory manual, look at a number of issues. Drainage, as some council members may know, is critical from road building perspective. So it's really about keeping the good roads good, getting on them at the right time to spend that right dollar to save us, $4 down the road potentially. So that's really how things start to flesh out. We look at priorities based on that. I think it's important to note that what we would call a now need, or a road that sort of looks deteriorated, alligator cracking, I'd hate to say it, but Arthur Street would be in that case. It is not a rehabilitatable road right now. It is definitely needs to be blown away and reconstructed. So, if we have roads like that, there is not really a cost savings to us because it's needing a recon anyway. What we want to get on are roads that don't get to that point, and we can just inject the appropriate dollar amount to just resurface those roadways and keep them lasting so that we keep the granular base, we keep the underlying asphalt in good condition. That is the most cost-effective way to do it. So that's really what the intent is, and why we do what we do. Some people have said to us, "Why are you doing that road? This road is horrible." Well, that road's already gone. So that's why we've created a maintenance paving program, and you can see that in Birdland, where we basically took some really horribly riding roads and applied about 2.5 inches of asphalt on top of that. And I think the ride is much better. I think the residents would say a much better road from what they once had, and it's a fairly cost-effective holding strategy, is really what it is. So there's a lot that goes into that. Unfortunately, in this case, Maryhill Side Road 16 and Spitzig have been on the books for some time, and we have deferred. They were deferred again last year. Maryhill Road and Side Road 16, obviously geography makes a ton of sense. You wouldn't want to do one outside of the other one. Currently in the program, though, Maryhill Road and Side Road 16 are not funded. They are to be debentured if they are to be done this year. Spitzig Road is funded, and that would be the last piece of Spitzig. We've been on Spitzig too, so that would sort of be the last piece. I think on the road side of things as well, you can see we have a maintenance paving program in there, and there's 69 Union Street. That would be the parking lot area at the yard. We don't have enough space any longer. People are parking on the road. It's not great there. So there was a plan in place to redo that parking area to support the staff there that use that yard. Country Squire Road was a project that was been done that we are a funding partner with the City of Waterloo on. That's a boundary road for us. And there's about $120,000 there that is owed to Waterloo for the work that was done last year. So that's why you see that in this year's capital program. And then Glasgow Street Hill has been a challenge for some time. Waterloo does look after the winter maintenance from Country, I guess it's Millennium, all the way down to the bridge. And then we take care of the bridge, and then on our side of Conestoga. So we do have that there, and that bend on Glasgow has always been a challenge with drainage and erosion. So that's why we're showing that in here as well. So that is currently funded. That work is shown to be funded. And then on the road side of things, we have the conversion program. I think it's important to speak briefly about the conversion program. We talked a little bit about it on Tuesday, but I think more importantly, we can get into some of the details here. Is that we're having a number of gravel roads and surface treated roads that are seeing increased traffic volumes that would support the need to convert those from gravel to surface treat, sometimes maybe gravel to hot mix, and definitely from surface treat. And Hopewell Creek Road is one of the to go from surface treat to asphalt. So that is just, again, an indicator of growth. People are finding other ways around. Traffic volumes are increasing on some of the busier or some of the main roads. People don't like congestion, so they find their own ways around. That's just the nature of how generally those networks change over time with growth. The unfortunate part here is that, again, we're not funding our conversion program here. We're showing Ryder as the next conversion road to sort of take care of the last remaining gravel road out in that southeast quadrant in Breslau. And there is 90,000 that is funded to apply the last lift for Vance Road. So it's unfortunate. And I guess, one could argue that we shouldn't be looking at conversion if we can't do what we already have before us. And I think therein lies some conundrum too. And I think it's worth mentioning that it is a challenge. There isn't enough revenue right now to support what we deem to be some important projects here in our road network and our culvert bridge program.
If I may, Letson Drive, I know that's on this list of resurfacing candidates. We've had issues with Letson Drive this year, I think, as you're aware. Will that one be getting done this year, or is it going to be pushed back again?
I'm not sure. So that would, so gravel road resurface is contained in the operating budget, not the capital program. Certainly, there is no need for conversion. That would not be an appropriate road to convert. Really, I think in the grand scheme of things out there, I think it's more drainage related issues on Letson than it is really a road condition issue. So I think that's a sort of a separate item. But I don't believe that is part of our gravel resurfacing program this year.
Okay, no, I was just noticing the note on the side. That's why I was asking on page 162. Thank you.
Councillor Schmidt.
Following up on bridges, we seem to discuss that every year. And the amount of dollars you spend on building a bridge, designing a bridge, as a layman, just seems out of line. Is there a new methodology that we as a township or we with a surrounding township could look at to reduce costs by bringing engineering and that type of expertise in-house? Seems to me there's a lot of, I guess, insurance or building costs by going to experts on that maybe isn't required. And the example I'm going to use is Sealing Road. If you go to the extension, hit the T and veer left, that bridge was closed by Center Wellington a number of years ago, and the community just couldn't abide by that. So they built their own bridge for $30,000. And okay, that doesn't include labor, so maybe that's $100,000 project. And every bridge we build is $1.8, $2.5 million. Can we bring some engineering expertise in-house and take on that responsibility and reduce cost by an order of magnitude?
Through you, Mayor Shantz, to Councillor Schmidt, it's an interesting question. Certainly you can look to bring in that engineering service that exists out there for sure. I think there are municipalities that have that. I guess there's a few things on cost escalation in construction in general, and bridges are not immune to this. Excess soil is a huge problem. That is a provincial legislated problem that municipalities have to deal with. So I can't speak to what other people do or don't do. Certainly we follow along with legislation. That's incredibly important. We think there should be some advocacy regarding that. And I think that what was intended, the consequences are they far away what they were trying to intend to stop. And I think you had predominant issues more in the GTA area, less out here, but they paintbrushed everybody in the province, unfortunately. So that is a huge cost driver to what you're seeing in some of these expenses. Because when I started here 12 years ago, we were doing, so Bish Street was probably around $700,000 for a really nice culvert out there. If anybody's drove Bish Street, it was a wonderful culvert, and that was $700,000. That's probably twice the cost now to do something like that. And why? Material, concrete has gone up. And excess soil is a huge issue. And we're seeing that on reconstruction projects. In Industrial Drive, we were able to save about $300,000 by not removing the material off site and then putting it in front of sort of the PIB area in Elmira here. So we were looking for creative ways to try to limit the costs. And I guess in a roundabout way, what I'm saying is that we could certainly elicit that experience and have that help. But I don't know that that's where we'd see the cost savings in the design aspect. I think it's all in the construction side of things that we're seeing that. I think generally engineering costs for bridge design isn't that out of line or out of whack. We do have a good experienced individual here who's got a lot of culvert and bridge experience, so that helps us a lot. I think we've moved the needle since certainly when I was here to where we are now as far as how we review things and how we look at things, and some of the things that we look to avoid. So it's certainly something we can explore and we can see, and we can reach out to other municipalities to see how they integrate that service and what they do. A lot of times it's more from a review perspective as opposed to a stamping and issuing it for construction. Just with the liability and with the codes entailed, I think that's where you see some of the challenges, but it's certainly something we can look into.
Yeah, I think that's worthwhile because the budget number is so high, but as you talk, I had more questions because excess soil, wondering why that cost is so high. Is it partly because we're adding costs by our site alteration bylaw and charging ourselves to move soil within the township? That's something is that part of it? Or explain that a bit more. And my caution would be, instead of looking at other municipalities just on bridges, let's look at the private sector, because obviously there's a difference between what public pays and what private pays. Be a comment.
Yeah, so on the excess soil side, it's legislated that you have to test now. Your frequency is really tight. We used to be able to go and figure out where was, what we'd consider dirty soil. And then you would sort of go into construction and you would use time and material, which was pretty cost effective. And we would sort of really zero in. So we'd save a bunch of money on geotechnical services. Now you need a qualified person to determine this. Municipalities are looking at this very differently. We think we are doing as cost-effective a process as possible because we're not putting the onus on the contractor. Some municipalities do that, and you pay for that in construction. There's no question. So I think from a cost perspective, we are trying to save it, but the legislation you can't avoid. If you have so much material, you have to test so frequently. So you're spending more in geotech. But what we are doing is we're taking a lot of that on with our own consultant and our own team, as opposed to applying that risk to the contractor. So we're saying this is our dirt, essentially our soil. You're on our road. This is ours. We'll manage and deal with it. And we just tell you where to take it. And then you have to do a bunch of tracking. Other municipalities have said, we don't want anything to do with it. Contractor, you look after it all and you meet all the legislation and all that stuff. But then you pay for it at the end anyway. You just don't see it all the time. So I think it's just different approaches to dealing with the same challenge that we're all facing here. But there's no getting around it. There's just ways to try to mitigate what that cost escalation can be.
And I know the testing has changed considerably in the last years, where you test at the source, you test when you're at the end, and yeah. Sort of double. Councillor Grant.
Thank you. Through you to Jared. I'm going to open the Peel Street can of worms and ask, from last year, what have we seen from a cost increase? Just so we have a perspective of what sitting on it for a year has kind of cost us.
Oh, sorry, from the Peel Street?
Peel Street,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I think what we're seeing is ongoing deterioration of it just sitting there. So we are inspecting that every time, and every time, unfortunately, our inspectors go out and see it. They see a little more and a little more. So I think in this case, it's stringers. There's more stringers that are going that need to be replaced. At one point, we were looking to utilize some of the existing stringers. Now we're looking to get rid of most of them. So again, the longer we wait, deterioration happens. I hate to say it, but for the lack of maintenance that has been done on some of those structures, deterioration occurred right now. So it's unfortunate, just physics and nature is what's happening here. So the longer the wait, there's a potential cost increase, obviously, and that's what we're doing. And it's gotten to the point where we were just notified this year that we need to look at bird netting, or not bird net, safety netting, sorry, under both Middlebrook, which is in far worse shape. Like Middlebrook's not rehabable. I think that's important to note as well. Peel Street is still. But the longer we wait, we may have to do some safety mitigation measures.
Right. And then just from a cost perspective, what is the difference from last year to this year?
So $160,000 increase from last year to this year.
Okay, thank you.
Everyone's thinking. Other questions?
Sorry,
Sure.
just I want to also highlight that we do have a water and wastewater rate review study. I think it's important to mention to council here that is contained in this budget. You can see a number of funding sources. We fund water, sewer development charges, infrastructure reserve. Other funding includes OCIF, which is provincial funding that comes to us, as well as other contributions from development community or in this case, airport. It could be private landowners too, developing or contributing to. So that's what the other funding represents. And then the Canada Community Building Fund was the formerly known as the gas tax, federal gas tax. And then of course we have the debenture line. And I think it's important to note that we are, as we mentioned on Tuesday, there are no reserves being built up. And I know that was, it's a concern, I think, from all of us. And even with having an infrastructure reserve fund, it is strictly an in and out. There was $1.8 million available this year, and it is shown as expended through both the Rec and Community Services capital as well as the Infrastructure Services capital. So I think what's important here is that we are showing for a second year in a row now a water wastewater rate review study. That is incredibly important. I believe it's about 2005 since the last one was done. So seeing that we are not putting money into the reserve indicates that obviously we are hitting it hard, but also it's probably not right-sized. So that is something that we feel is incredibly important to help in the situation too, that we need to dedicate staff resourcing to ensure that this rate review study starts to move forward. And I think that means that there are other things that may not be attended to. It will take staff time. We are also going through a development charges background study, which needs to have a new bylaw by June of this year. That is a high pressure priority for us. We are in the throes of that, and that is taking staff time away as well, but incredibly important. We cannot go without a bylaw on the development charges, because then you can no longer collect, and you can appreciate with a fast growing municipality, we are reliant on development charges to help support this initial injection of infrastructure. So I just wanted to highlight that is a really important piece for us. We recognize that the lack of reserves and revenue that needs to change, and we need to do put our best foot forward, and that would be something that we have at our hands right now, and updating that will come before council. And that will ultimately be a council decision, whether they accept that rate or apply another rate. I mean, that's an important piece too. You know, the rate may be so high that it's not palatable, but again, that will be a council decision. And I don't want to prejudge that. I don't know. But we do rely on water and wastewater for doing reconstruction projects. As you can see, it's generally a split that way. We generally leverage upper government funding to complete those, because the levy injection just doesn't exist. On a 29 million, we have only 900,000 of new levy. Save and except for the infrastructure reserve. So I think that's a picture too that's worth highlighting. And I think at a future year, there's been some talk around it. We know that Kitchener has a stormwater utility, and we know that Waterloo has a stormwater utility. But there has been some talk with both Woolwich and Wilmot about looking to try to move that forward as well. While that's not part of this year's budget, I just think I wanted to highlight that. Is that something that we would look to explore as well for another source of revenue to support some of our stormwater, potentially roads and bridges as well.
Councillor Bryan.
Thank you. Through you to Jared. How many projects did we not either complete or didn't get started this year due to whatever restrictions may have been in place, whether they be financial or staffing?
That's a good question. So Duke Street's another deferral. We have been moving along, but we were fairly involved with some of the Church Street work too. So again, that's some of the challenges. I think we've done a pretty good job this year. I would say it was the largest capital program last year. I think we've been able to touch everything and move it forward to the best of our ability. Appreciate at times that there are other things at play. So while we need to show that in a capital, move it forward, there may be other issues. So I can't give you specifics. Nothing jumps to mind right now that we did not accomplish. I think we've done and touched everything that we were to do, but I can certainly bring that forward if there's anything after this meeting, and certainly look into that and provide better answer.
Thank you. Yeah, I just have one that I wanted to get some follow-up on, and that was the Notre Dame Islay one, because I noticed when I was through there last week, there's still masses of I don't know, drainage or whatever the piping was sitting on the sides of the road, and I don't know if it's going to get finished before spring, but with the weather, I kind of doubt it.
Yeah, and that's actually a great example. You know, we could put the best design, the best tender forward, and at the end of the day, you know, it's down to construction, engineering, and oversight. So, in that case, you know, it was I would say somewhat out of our control as far as timing goes, unfortunately. It would have been nice to have that wrap up. Carryover is a big problem when you are under resources. We are in that world. You need to get that project done in that year and carry on to the next project, because that is a challenge. It's time and energy. Certainly I could provide more information to council in an in-camera setting, but I think for now that would be what I would say.
Councillor Cadeau.
Thanks, Mayor. Through you to Director Poupey. I'm looking at page 224 of the package and that debenture line that you had mentioned. Last year was about 3.5 million. This year, we're targeting 11.5. I was hoping that you could explain at high level detail, what that 11.5 is really coming from. And then I was looking forward to 2026 and it's 30 million. Can you provide some context into that one as well?
Oh, geez, you saw that one. No, just teasing. Through you, Mayor Shots to Councillor Cadeau. I think I'll try my best. So this year, the debentures, there are a couple there, so there's some differences here. So some of these are already pre-approved debentures, certainly in the wastewater side of things for this year. If we start looking, Breslau Drain 1, the 1.9 million, that is a likely an internal, I'm not sure, but it's likely an internal debenture, as a municipal drain is not counted as infrastructure that we own or an asset that we own. So that is our share for Breslau Drain 1. So I would assume that to be counted, that's an important project. Obviously, we're going to move forward with, and we won't know until the tender comes in with that actual number. So again, that's a cost estimate that we're envisioning. So that's that debenture. Peel Street is, Peel Street is a big component of that 3.9 million. But that debenture there is strictly levy debenture on the Capital Bridge Culvert Program. So all that would be is somehow levy debenture. There is no other funding source for that. Regarding the downtown Elmira revitalization plan, there was some discussion on the Tuesday. I should highlight that is looking at some land purchase. Director Freeze had mentioned that in a closed session, I should share some of that information, but the intent here would be to do a short-term debenture of some form to purchase land and then to recoup costs later, and it should come into the positives is the goal there. So that's to understand that's important, that is not a debenture that we see as long-term carrying costs at all associated with that, and it actually would come into a positive return for the municipality. The hot mix resurfacing, again, much like the Capital Bridge and Culvert Program, levy debenture solely, and that would be to fund Maryhill Road, Side Road 16, if council were to elect to do that. The $810,000 for the North Sanitary Pumping Station is from wastewater debenture, and that's pre-approved already. That work is continuing to work to carry on. There was some delay, so to Councillor Bryant's point, there is delay there as a result of simply a supply chain issue on control panels. Fascinating how that works, but that held up the whole job. So now we have all the pieces. We're excited to get that done, hopefully by Q2 this year, and be big improvements down there. So that was a debenture already approved in the wastewater side. And then the road conversion, again, another levy supported debenture there. So that generally takes us in through 2024 and what that 11.5 looks like. Going into 2026, I think this is important, is that levy debentures, long or short-term borrowing costs, whatever that looks like, obviously there are carrying costs associated with that, and it's not like you can pick that up anywhere. Unlike, say, a rate or a user pay debenture such as water or wastewater, you just need to look to adjust the rate, and ultimately that gets picked up over time, right? So it's kind of a covered debenture over time. With respect to development charges, I think this is an important piece, is that we are less concerned with debenturing development charges because all of it is picked up and there is no hardship on the ratepayers of Woolwich. You are allowed to recover full costs for borrowing, whatever they may be, whether it's 1%, 5%, doesn't matter. The whole cost of carrying is allowed to be picked up through development charges. So that's an important piece, and that's what you're seeing in 2026. That debenture, the significant debentures, the 12.5 million there, the 3.5 million associated with Breslau Wetwell, the 9 million for the lift station. Those are all development charges debentures that you would be able to recoup full cost for that, and you would be made whole.
Anyone else?
Following up on debentures, maybe be for Director of Finance, how much, I guess, capital repayments on the debentures are we making in 2024 scheduled? I'm trying to look at the change in net debt.
Through the mayor, I'd have to pull that out. I believe according to your statements last year, it was about 2.4 million was the outstanding. And then you had an additional borrowing in 23 of about 1.2 million. And that 1.2 is funded through the wastewater area. So I'll pull those numbers out and I'll get them for you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Counselor Bryant?
Thank you. When I'm looking at page 224, I'm seeing other funding. 2024, we've got 6,000 or 6 million, but I go to 2026 and we've got 22 million. Why are we getting extra funding in that year?
Yeah, through you, Mayor Shantz to Councillor Bryant. So the other funding column is a bit of a catch-all. In that particular year in 2026, we've got funding partners with some landowners in Breslau that would benefit from the servicing. So that's why you're seeing significant other funding contributions is from those landowners. The regional airport is a significant contributor to a lot of that work out there, and that's where you're seeing some of that funding show, as well as some injections from other private landowners. It's also, we don't have a specific column for the OCIF funding, so you'll see OCIF in there, but that's not what's driving the big dollars in that year. That is other contributors.
Thank you.
Counselor Cato?
Thanks, Mayor. Through you to, I think, the interim director of finance. What's the difference between the infrastructure levy and just absorbing that within the general tax levy? Like, what are the long-term implications? Because it's pretty evident that reserve fund is not a reserve fund. We heard that continuously. We're in an infrastructure deficit that we're continuing to look to debenture to solve, which is not a long-term strategy. So why are we continuing to levy a 1.5% when we really ought to be including this in the general levy, I think?
That's right.
Through the mayor, the amount that's included in the operating budget is a contribution that goes into a reserve fund. And it normally goes in there to fund the rehabilitation and maintenance of the existing infrastructure. So if you look at there's an appendix to the budget report that shows the reserve fund. So currently, your infrastructure levy reserve fund, which is drawn out annually to fund your capital. So you try to make a contribution to your infrastructure levy so that it's a sustainable reserve fund. And the amounts going in, some years will be less than the amounts coming out, but on average, that contribution will sustain your assets that the township currently owns. If you look at the amount, we've increased that this year by about 1.5% as a contribution to try and move towards that sustainability level of funding. It's not there. If you look at the reserve fund report that's attached to the report that was provided to council, you'll notice that the opening balance in that reserve fund from 2023 coming into 2024 is projected to be close to zero or a little less. And you look at the draw, the amount being contributed this year is about 1.8 million. And the actual requests coming out of that are about 3.4. So that reserve fund will be in a deficit position going into from 2024 to 2025. There is an analysis that I have talked to the CAO on that needs to be done by finance within the 2024 year and report back to council. Is if you look at your various reserve funds that are in that schedule for the funding of the existing infrastructure, there isn't sufficient money going in to meet the current demands coming out. So we need to come back to council with a report during 2024 highlighting what is the funding level we need to achieve to maintain sustainability of the infrastructure that the township owns. And that will be done. You'll also be faced with that in 2025 when the update of the asset management plan comes, where in there you're supposed to be looking at a funding strategy for sustainability. So we need to come back to council. The amount going in as of today isn't sufficient to sustain the infrastructure. The magnitude of that deficiency, we need to spend some work on and analyzing and report back to council.
What would the draw on this year's levy be if we didn't debenture some of that infrastructure that we really are required to look at? And if I had to point to some of them, I mean, some of them the hot mix resurface, road conversions. I think that these are all things that, you know, we ought to be taking good care of. And if we're looking to debenture it in order to get it done, what if we just levied that? Because ultimately we debenture, we're having to pay back interest on top of that. It's gonna cost us more long-term. So I don't know, is that enough to answer?
Through the mayor, if you were to look at the levy amount, so this year, the amount coming out of the levy to fund the infrastructure request is about 1.8 million. If you were to looking at, don't want to issue debenture, I want to raise that amount through the taxes. Then based on the debt ask within the 2024 budget, you'd be looking at increasing taxes by about $11.5 million on top of what's already there to meet the request to fund it.
Councillor Cadeau, were you
That's-
asking to separate out
Yeah.
some of the capital projects that seem to be more maintenance related?
That's correct, because that's the whole debenture line is the 11.5. If we were to look at roads, say, and everything that we're debenturing to maintain our roads, whether it be the hot mix resurface or road conversions, which I think are equally important. You know, could we add that to the general levy, take it off the debenture? Because I think that that is the type of services we need to be offering. Those are our infrastructure that we need to maintain. So I really struggle continuing to debenture for those types of services.
Mr. Poupey, can you identify just roughly what those numbers might be?
Yeah, through you, Mayor Sean, to Councillor Godot. So just with hot mix program and the road conversion program, it's about 2.2 million just for those. So just so I'm clear as well, so that 2.2 potentially is what you're suggesting. If that was to be applied to the levy increase for 2024, what would that look like?
I think around 140,000 is 1%, right?
143.
So. Councillor Bryant, your light is on. Did you?
Oh, no, sorry.
Okay. Councillor Schwint?
I guess going back to the bridge conversation, the roads conversation, you mentioned a couple provincial regulations. They're adding a whole lot of costs in terms of testing. I see our fire department behind us, and I think they've got a bunch of regulations that have added a whole bunch of costs. So that's something staff could make a list of 4 or 5, 8 regulations that add a lot of costs without adding value to us as a municipality. I think that's a conversation we as council should have with the province. And I would think we might get a sympathetic ear with the current government in terms of red tape and maybe being able to reduce costs, not so much at the bureaucracy level, but at the political level. And is there some little hanging fruit we could push on to help with our budget issues?
I think we've done that in the past.
Yeah,
Is that?
yeah. So yeah, through Mayor Sean to Councillor Schwint, that's certainly something we can. There's a number of things. I mean, even just in the way the courts have made some decisions as well. They put a lot of onus on municipalities from a risk perspective and liability perspective as well, just outside of construction too. But certainly there are construction legislation and so forth that has created some what we would see on potentially necessary costs.
Mr. Brenneman?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, through you to council. One of the things I'm going to look for to circulate to this council was the Conservative government a number of years ago did ask us to comment as a region, cities, townships on reducing red tape reduction. And that spoke to a lot of the areas that we said, you know, they should reduce from an efficiency and effectiveness standpoint. I'm not sure if we ever quantified, you know, what the tangible or real savings would be, But nevertheless, because, you know, you are talking about, you know, this particular government, they're interested in, you know, hopefully reducing red tape. I'm not sure, you know, certainly some actions have happened. I don't think all of them that we asked for have happened. But nevertheless, it still would be a good piece of information, I think, for council to have. Because we collaborated as area municipalities on what we submitted so that we would have a stronger voice. It wasn't just the township of Woolwich. I mean, just to give you one example, and they haven't done it, is the amount of time and effort that needs to go into the annual compliance for community emergency management preparedness and planning is unbelievable. And you have to question whether that's worth the time and effort considering the magnitude of what the province is asking for. And then again, that takes away from the real work that we could be getting done instead of just filing compliance documentation, right? The other thing that we've asked for in the past too, and I mentioned this the other day, is if the government would move away from application-based funding to allocation-based funding, so that we wouldn't have to go through a lot of the application reporting in terms of making the original submission, and then all of the reporting and follow-up that needs to happen. So I'm not sure that will get us to where you want to get to, as Councillor Schwint, in terms of real tangible savings. But nevertheless, there is some work that still needs to be done by the province in terms of red tape reduction.
So we had a report sometime in the last 5 years perhaps, that showed the increase that was because of, or the dollar amount actually of our budget that was because of legislation.
Yep,
Can we pull that out and update it?
yeah, certainly we can
I think
resurrect
that's
that.
what you're looking
Yep.
for.
Yep.
And
Go
then
ahead.
switching gears, because I'm trying to find some money here. You mentioned the DC charges would be updated sometime this spring, summer. In the interim, can we modify that in line with our general levy changes? For example, if we're looking at an 8% increase today in the general levy or this month, could we increase DC charges by 8% across the board as an interim measure? To, I guess, kickstart, it's evident DC charges aren't covering our costs. And I'm worried about the time lag in some of this.
Yeah, through Mayor Shantz, Councillor Schwinn. So development charges are very specific to what you can use them for. There has to be a growth component to it. And we have a DC bylaw enacted already. So really, it's already bylawed in there. The time and energy it would take to do an amendment to that with a short window here, I don't see would be very beneficial from a staff resourcing perspective. I think what we are going to see is an increase to our DC charge likely, and we are trying to leverage absolutely everything we can out of the DC that we are allowed to do. There was some changes from legislation as well that has put us in a bit of a negative position on some of the things we can recoup for, but it is very specific. We do have a good team assembled here on looking at that, so I feel pretty comfortable that in June we will have good. But I guess in short answer, you can't simply just use DCs for funding some of those other things, and there wouldn't probably be, you can't just really increase that percentage without having to go through public process engagement. So I think that's really where we are right now.
Anything else? A quick question from very early on in your presentation, with the low-level bridge.
Mhm.
Are we talking to GRCA, or what's happening with the dam there? I know that's been a long-standing source of question and of potential concern.
Yeah, no, it's a good question. Through Mayor Shantz to council. Trying to think now if this was 4 or so years ago. We had some pretty good discussions with GRCA regarding the low-level bridge, regarding the trail as well at the time. I remember that. And they acknowledged that the dam needs repair. They had asked if we had wanted to have the dam removed, and we had said no. So as far as I am aware, it is in their capital program somewhere to be done, yet to be executed, but really I don't know what the holdup would be. So certainly we can inquire with them, but yeah, we see that it's getting worse again, right? It's not getting better by sitting there. So it's certainly something we can poke them again and find out where they're at with that from a timing perspective.
Yeah, I think I did see it on their capital plan. I just wondered if we coordinate or if it ties in at all with our own work on the low level bridge, or should it?
I would say, yeah, I would say it doesn't need to. We can certainly work in the apps, and we're probably, I would hope they would have the dam repaired prior to us actually pressing play on a replacement there.
Thank you. I'm not seeing any other questions, so thank you.
Thank you.
And do you want to take a break before we go to rec, or do you want to do rec? What's your pleasure, council? No, should we carry on? Okay. We'll call on Director of Recreation and Community Services, Ann MacArthur, and her team to walk us through the recreation capital budget. Welcome back.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and Council. Certainly, we don't envy council's position having to listen to us all advocate for our own, areas. At the end of the day, we're all working here for the best of the community, right? So staff certainly have had difficult conversations. We do every year, but both internally and RCS, what we're going to fund, and then certainly at SMT table, difficult conversations about all the things that this community needs. And at the end of the day, we may be vying. It feels like hard service versus soft service, but at the end of the day, really coming forward what we feel, is necessary and needed for our community. So we want to, we do feel the weight of that, but at the same time, trying to protect the resources that this community has built up over, so many decades. So in terms of our capital plan, we spend $2 to $3 million annually on bricks and mortar for about 19 municipally owned buildings. I think it's really important to point out that's not rec facilities. That is all municipally owned buildings. So bricks and mortar for the administration, fire departments, and the recreation centers. So it's important to note that. So that will include fire stations, the works department, the admin building, as we noted, and then major recreation community centers, as well as park amenities and field houses and sport field amenities. So like lighting systems that are quite expensive. So I'm just going to highlight a couple of challenges that we are facing, and then Thomas is going to outline some of the projects that we've identified for 2024. So not unlike IS, we do feel that we are struggling with insufficient capital dollars to plan appropriately for plan, an asset renewal. We're often working building equipment beyond its useful life. We are fortunate that Thomas and the team have, built in a pretty strong preventative maintenance plan to try to extend the life of our assets before that has to hit the capital plan. Parkland dedication is another challenge, right? So we got this development, which again, like IS, we support wholly, but with that comes parkland space, and people moving into this community want to see amenities and quicker than probably we would have developed them in past years. So there's an expectation that these communities, they move in, that they're built out with parks and sport fields and trails and connecting link. So, you know, as noted earlier, we are challenging our reserve funds annually, buying for dollars. At times it's really difficult to, we're trying to fix equipment, so HVAC system, we're trying to decide, can we put a new amenity in a park, and then planning for a major replacement. So we know St. Jacobs, the boards and floor, for example, it's about a $1.3 million project we put off for about 5 years. We know it's coming down the pipe, but we're thinking, okay, we have a $2 million budget. We know this project's gonna be 1.3, 1.4 million, and we're not able to fund and continue to operate and maintain existing amenities and save for that or save for the next fire station. So that's a challenge that we work with each year. So I think it's, we recognize it's difficult to choose between services, but we want to, you know, we're here before you to advocate for recreation and community assets, you know, for mental health, for physical health, to build strong communities, development of our youth, so both through competitive sport and unstructured play, and allowing aging population to stay active and integrated in our community. So that's kind of our opening and some of the reasons why are driving our capital plan. And then with that, I'll let Thomas kind of talk about a few of the projects we're gonna move forward.
Great, thanks, Ann. Through you, Mayor Shantz, the council. So I'll just kind of walk through, you probably skip to the next one, Ann. Just kind of each of our areas. I'm not going to touch on every specific project, some of the ones that maybe, you know, are kind of routine items. But if council has any questions, obviously feel free to bring those up and we can address those as well. So next year's a pretty light year for equipment, a couple of truck replacements, one truck replacement. And we're looking at upgrade to an EV there. So we are planning on drawing $30,000 from the Climate Action Greening Infrastructure Reserve Fund to fund the additional costs there from what we have in the equipment reserve. And that's kind of, you know, our limit really from an EV perspective based on our current infrastructure. We've got a residential style charging port out back to WMC. This will be our second EV. You know, we've looked at doing some upgrades to the property there, but as you know, we're also going through, you know, looking for an appropriate site for a new joint works area facility for both departments, that sort of thing. So anyways, this will be our second in the department. And then we have a new vehicle, a new truck in there as well too, DC funded vehicle. And that is just due to our continued kind of growing of our summer operations with more parts and student and seasonal staff coming on for 4, 5, 6 months over that time. So, and then we've got a tractor replacement as well too out at the cemetery. So 25-year useful life for that vehicle or that piece of equipment. So 1999. So, next. So South Parkwood, this is phase 2 of this park development. We are just finishing up a playground currently actually in this park. And then next year we're looking to extend the multi-use pad and put in or multi-use trail, and put in a multi-use pad, pickleball, basketball, that sort of thing. We have a playground replacement for next year in Maryhill. This playground was installed in 1999. It's due for replacement. The surfacing needs to be upgraded as well too, so it makes sense to replace the playground. We will obviously include a public consultation piece for that as well too, to allow residents in the settlement to provide some input on what gets put in there. Bolander Park washroom, upper paving of the parking lot down here. That's carryover from 2023. We were going to have the region complete that works, but just based on costing that came back, we're going to do that in-house next year. It made more sense for us to tackle that ourselves. Exciting one, the Breslin Memorial Park splash pad. So this project's been awarded, and we are planning to start as soon as, well, spring may come a little early this year, but plan is to open for the spring, same timing as the splash pad in Bolander. Breslau Memorial Park Field House. So we're looking at doing some engineering at this facility to replace the facility in 2025. So this building hasn't really been utilized for a number of years, other than for services for so hydro for the park, for the ball diamonds. There's a water that we brought in specifically for the outdoor rink that gets used in the winter there. But other than that, the building is in pretty poor shape. None of the plumbing fixtures are hooked up. It was on an existing well that hasn't been used in years, on an existing septic as well too that hasn't been used in years. So the plan for this site is to replace the building, allow for some storage for our volunteer groups for their winter ice rink, and then keep utilities in there as well too, obviously for the concession that's there, as well as the lights there that feed the ball diamonds. I think that's it for parks. So move on to property maintenance. Accessibility audits is the first one I have here. So 2025 AODA compliance. Our last AODA audit that we had done was in 2007. Obviously, we have a number of facilities that we've brought online since then. So we are just in the process of retaining a consultant to go through all of our facilities again, provide a bit of a capital plan for us and what we need to do to be compliant. This is going to be a challenge for us, obviously, to meet this deadline. We have a number of facilities, St. Jacob's Library comes to mind as a very difficult site for us to meet, be AODA compliant by 2025. And a facility also that's I believe on the table to be designated as a heritage facility as well too. So lots of factors at play there, but we need a clear plan and outline for us to come back to council with and look to see what it's going to cost to bring these facilities up to snuff. EV charging stations, that's carryover. That's actually underway right now in St. Jacobs. So that's just some carryover to fund that. Breslau Community Center, so unique idea for the site. We were planning on replacing the porches in much need of replacement. As council knows, we have the library that's moved into the basement too. So we have a front entrance to the community center that could be kind of repurposed as a separate entrance specifically to the library. So that's just an added benefit because the porch needs to be replaced. Looking at kind of really landscaping the front area there. And then a great idea by Ms. MacArthur as well too. There's a kitchen in that facility that's right at the front of the building to the left if you're facing the community center. That doesn't really get used. It's quite large in size. So the plans are to do some engineering work this year to convert half of that kitchen into exterior facing washroom facilities. And that way with the splash pad just right there on the corner, it provides an opportunity for people to use the washroom there versus having to staff the building to allow for washroom use. So the plans are to get that engineering and architectural work done in 2024. St. Jacobs Arena, some much needed upgrades here in the lobby. So the lobby really hasn't been touched since 1974 when the building was constructed. So we're looking to replace flooring, upgrade the washrooms, which will come with an accessibility component, and then replace the 2 dehumidifiers in the rink as well too, so that we're not running into some of the condensation issues that we have been in what seems like the last 5 years or so in September, right when we opened that first month. WMC dressing rooms, this is a big project here. Replacement of the flooring in the change rooms and hallway, washroom partitions, LED lighting in the change rooms as well too. This all kind of stems from issues with the original flooring that went in 2009. Popping of the flooring, it was replaced under warranty. Then it was actually taken out, removed completely with an alternative floating floor that went in that doesn't allows for moisture really to sit underneath the floor. So we're going to do it right this time, rectify those issues and put a proper floor in place. And then with regards to partitions and some plumbing fixtures, that sort of thing, it's just kind of wear and tear on the facility over the last 15 years. Change rooms, same story here. A lot of the plumbing, a lot of the mixing valves are going on in the pool shower, so those need to be replaced. The tile is just tired when you're running the pool, all day, every day for the last 15 years. It seems like Maybe it's a little premature, but lots of wear and tear on those facilities, so need to replace the tiles in there as well. St. Jacobs Fire Station, the exterior insulation finishing system, which is a exterior insulation with stucco on it, so that's just re-stuccoing the building. This has been on the forecast since the year I started, so 2019, it was planned to get done, and it's just kind of been deferred over the last 5 years, but it's in need to be done. Administration building, some cosmetic upgrades here, so painting just of the office areas, painting of the exterior stucco of this facility as well too. And then rooftop unit replacements. Again, during that kind of facilities campaign that we went through in 2007 to 2009, this building opened, I believe, in 2009, so 15 years this year. Climate action initiatives, I kind of spoke on this yesterday, looking to tackle some low-hanging fruit with this budget that's in there. The council will see, so 4 facilities that we have on the radar to convert just your standard furnace and AC over to a heat pump system. And then major facilities, last tab, so feasibility study for the Elmira Fire Station. This is carryover from 2023. We have retained a consultant, and what we're doing here is looking at this facility kind of from 2 perspectives. One being the facility itself. What does it make sense to do from a costing perspective? Renovate on site and put an addition, demolish and rebuild on site, or relocate to the site that's just up the road here on Church Street. So we're looking at that from that lens, from the cost lens, as well as from a like a life safety lens. So we retained a life safety consultant that does this work to look at response times in the community and outside the community from this station, where volunteers live, what are the needs of the department. So kind of trying to take look at that from 2 different angles. We are planning to come back with council in the first half of this year with a recommendation. There were previously recommendations adopted by council in 2009 and 2016 with regards to the new site, but just given the amount of time that it's been since then, we want to revisit it and make sure that this council is on the same page. And that's it. Next slide. I think you already kind of spoke to this, just some of the challenges that we're dealing with, but yeah, sir. Happy to take any questions that council may have.
Who would like to start? Councillor Cadeau.
Thanks, Mayor. Through you to Assistant Director Vanderhoff, you had mentioned the St. Jacobs Arena. I remember September and trying to watch some of the hockey there. It was a bit of a challenge. I'm happy that that's cleaned up a little bit, but when it's saying the arena underfloor cooling and then the rink boards, I'm under the assumption that you're not going to replace the boards before you replace the subfloor. It would make sense to kind of start there and then put the boards over top. You can't kind of separate those 2 out and say, do the boards this year and then the underfloor next year, which I assume would be, the boards would be cheaper than the underfloor is my assumption, but.
Through your response to Councillor Cadeau. So both of those items are actually on for 2025. So we would do the the slab, the underfloor cooling, and the boards and glass stands as well too, all in 2025. Next year is just the flooring and it's really a lobby renovation. So the lobby, the change rooms in the front part of the building, the original part of the building, and the washrooms in the front part of the building. And then, yeah, so that's it for next year.
And that's the 1.3 million?
So 1.3 is for 2025. I think Ann was just chatting to kind of what's coming down the pipeline for 2025.
Councillor Bryant.
Thank you. Through you, I guess, to Thomas or Ann. I noticed in 2024, you got a donation of 350,000. Is that for the Breslau splash pad or is that for something else?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah, we wanted to make sure that we capture that funding.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Schwint.
In December, we talked about the old nursery school on Mockingbird. Is that project underway, and are there any, I guess, climate change initiatives being part of that conversion project over the next few months?
Through you, Mayor Sean. So just working with the tenant right now on designs with their architect. Not quite at that phase yet, but the plan is to, they've actually completed designated substance removal on site, and they're planning on starting construction in the spring, but no firm plans yet. But that is something that's in our agreement with them. Yep.
Councillor Cadeau.
Thanks. This one relates to the grants line on 236. I'd love to see the 1.47 million in grants from last year. At least that was the budgeted. Our budget is 20,000 this year. Why such a disconnect? Is that kind of tied to some of the reductions in funding we saw from the provincial government that we heard about on Tuesday? Or why is there such a disconnect from what we budgeted last year for those grants to what we're budgeting this year for grants?
Through you, Mayor Shantz, to Councillor Cadeau. So that was tied specifically to the Woolwich Memorial Center refrigeration plant. But yes, we have seen a significant reduction in the amount of grant funding that is available compared to during and, right after the pandemic. So.
I'm not seeing any other questions. Council going once? No? Okay, thanks. Well, we will have opportunities to ask questions as we debate as well. I'm sure things will come up then. Thank you very much. And we will take how long a break? Let's say till 10:30.
We're liable, but operator liable, council specific, sorry, staff, like township is liable.
Okay, I'm going to call us back to order. And we'll welcome our fire services and Chief Aldis and Deputy Chief Eveson. The floor is yours. Sorry, were we not quite ready? Okay. Okay, we'll reconvene and hear from Chief Aldis and Deputy Chief Eveson from Fire Services.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. We're going to present our draft capital budget for 2024. In our 2024 capital requests is, one is our annual bunker gear replacement with a value of $66,000. These are to replace gear that is 10 years of age, which is the life expectancy of the gear. We're looking to replace all our thermal imaging cameras. These have started to deteriorate. Their expected end of life has been years ago, apparently. So it's now time to start replacing these. And our auto extrication equipment, which is what we use for car accidents. So it's our jaws of life, airbags, rams, cutters, spreaders. The ones that we have now for our hydraulics are anywhere from 25 to 30 years old. They're still functioning, but we can't get parts to fix them any longer if they break. And our hydraulics that we have in 3 of our stations are at their end of their life expectancy as well. So it's time to start the replacement of them. 75,000 is just for one station of a complete set. So you can see in your, we've put in for over 4 years, we'll be looking to replace every one of them within the stations. Is there any questions upon those 3 items?
Questions? Councillor Cadeau.
So that's, sorry, through you to the fire chief, that's 6 new replacement equipment for one for each of the stations, is that right?
Through Mayor to Councilor Cadeau, that's the 75,000 is for one station only. We're doing one station this year. And we're looking to do the other ones, 2 in 25, 2 in 26, and 1 in 27.
Sorry, why is this year 65?
Oh, I got 75, because, sorry, the 65 is for the 3 hydraulic, and then the airbags are $10,000. So we've made it, that's the 75,000.
Anyone else? Okay.
The next slide is our vehicle replacement. You can see we need to replace our 2002 Elmira Heavy Rescue at a projected cost of $1.4 million. Since we started down the budget process, the senior officer staff in Elmira is wondering if a big heavy rescue is the way to go. So in December, we quickly looked at North Dumfries has what they call a quick response rescue, which is substantially smaller and cheaper. Wellesley has basically a extended cab pickup truck similar to what RCS and the roads are buying with a cap in the back, and they're at a substantially less cost. And if we go down that road of one of those 2 styles and we add a 16-foot trailer for their hazardous materials response, which could also be used as an incident command if we get to a longer call. You're looking at a substantially cheaper version. Instead of 1.4, we could be around the $700,000 mark. So there's a bit of savings if you go down that route. Elmira's 1986 aerial, it's up for replacement. I have $1 million set on that at this moment in time. We are working with one of our neighboring municipalities to buy their 10-year-old aerial that is coming out of service this year. So if we can get that at a substantially less dollar value, then we will look at purchasing that from them. And if that type of a deal works, we have a couple of other used vehicles within our fleet that we would look at doing the same type of idea with them, is they're getting a 10-year-old one from them at a substantially less cost. So that's the pumper tanker in Elmira and the aerial in Breslau. That would just save us a lot of money. And then it's a truck that's a specialty truck for them, so it doesn't see a lot of use. And for us, it'll be the same idea. And then the replacement of a 2015 Dodge Ram pickup truck. New for us is for me anyways, is we're looking to do development charges. We have a new pumper for Breslau, which is slated at $1.7 million. In addition to that is, you'll see we're gonna start doing some additional sirens in Breslau and St. Jacobs. And they're at the $25,000 mark each. We're still in the investigation of that, but we may actually have some corporate funding as well to help offset those costs. Do we have any questions on those purchases?
Councillor Grant.
Thank you. Through you to the chief. I'm just wondering, so when we're looking at the used vehicles, presumably that township is selling those vehicles so that they could offset the cost of new ones. Is that something that we're looking at doing potentially for vehicles that are maybe coming up to that 10-year mark?
Yes. So that with the ones that we were looking to purchase, so the rescue would be sold. One of our neighboring municipalities got close to $100,000 for a used truck. So it has gone up a lot and what we can get a rebound back on, but we would be selling whatever we have to help offset the cost of the purchase.
Anyone else? Councillor Cadeau.
Along the same lines, that used vehicle life cycle is 20 years then? So we would still have half of that cycle in, or is it 25? I'm just, sorry, I'm fuzzy on that.
Through Mayor to Councillor Cadeau, we could do we can extend the life however we wish. If we start in this kind of a program with the other municipality, we could flip it every 10 years and still stay within the 20 years. And then, but we're getting a 10-year-old truck. And doing some math with talking to other municipalities that have done it, your savings for us is still substantial compared to what it would to be buying a brand new truck.
I'm trying to understand, because if it's a $2 million truck, the life cycle 20 years, municipality, township A uses it for the first 10 years for 1 million, and then we get it for the second 10 years for 1 million. You know, they're getting the newer equipment. Is it as great of a deal as it seems, I guess is my question.
Yes, it is, because the $1 million that I have listed in there is buying it from a used fire truck dealer. So they're buying them. We would be purchasing at the same price as what they would be getting at. Then they refurbish it, they put their profit on it. So it's a substantially less value. For some of these trucks, they were purchased before the spike. So they're not looking for present day cost recovery. They're just looking at whatever their cost recovery was on the purchase at the time. Because they look at a 10-year life cycle, so that they're just looking at selling it to whomever. So
Thanks. I'm liking that, I guess, discussions with other townships and municipalities may be able to get used equipment like that. I'm curious, can you comment on our out of service time with our vehicles? Are we running into issues with some motor vehicles that they're out of service and becomes a safety issue? Or are we in pretty good shape with our fleet right now?
through Mayor to Councillor Swint, we're in really good shape. We haven't really had any major lags except for if it's involved in an accident. And we've had that where we were told the repair would take 2 weeks and it took much longer than that, but you're held at the ransom of that vendor for doing that. We haven't really had many because we stay on top of all our maintenance, like our maintenance per repair budgets seem to keep going up and up and up because of the value of getting them fixed and staying on top of them. So we don't see any downtime from anything, so.
I think that's a good news story for the township.
I'm not seeing any other questions,
So
so
then, the last slide we have is we would be looking for pre-budget approval to replace the 2006 Elmira pumper. The lag time on these trucks are starting to get longer and longer and longer, so we'd like to be able to start the purchase process in 2024. So we get delivery earliest we get delivery then is in the 2026, when the money would be required for that purchase, so. And this is, all municipalities are starting to do this because of the lag time on getting trucks, so.
any other questions? I'm not seeing any. So, thank you. Is that the end of
Yeah, that's the end of
your
the
presentation?
presentation,
Yeah. Thank you very much. And we will move on to IT services. Come back whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Mayor Shantz. Just pulling up our presentation here. So the corporate services capital budget really speaks to IT services. I wanted to highlight that in IT, we sort of capture the budgets for some other projects, even if they're led by other departments. So the financial software you see in our IT capital is a project led by finance staff, although of course IT will support it. We're also looking for a website upgrade. That's a project that will be led by clerk staff. Also in the capital budget, you'll see the typical computer hardware updates. So our sort of user PCs and a photocopier, and then some server infrastructure and improvements. And then finally, IT will be supporting the township and the regional staff as they bring new technology or connections into the Breslau Library for their capital project. And with that, we would be happy to answer any questions.
Council, questions? Councillor Schwint.
I'm seeing the data storage back up in the 2025 year, I believe. Can we afford to wait that long? My big fear is if we're too reliant on cloud storage or our existing backups, it increases our vulnerability on cybersecurity more and more. Is that a risk worth taking, or are you comfortable we're in decent shape?
Through you, Mayor. So in 2025, yeah, there is the backup hardware. So that is the storage that we use for our backup processes. This year, though, we are investigating, what improvements need to be made to that whole process. And that it's a holistic kind of step back to say, okay, we're doing this, what could we be doing better? Right. And so that is something that is coming forward this year. Whether or not, you know, that falls under the server infrastructure bucket. You know, the hardware itself is good. It's just a matter of what more do we need to do. And oftentimes when you talk about, you know, if you want to do additional storage options, having multiple redundancies, there often comes additional operating costs. So it doesn't necessarily fall under capital. It falls under operating. So.
Anyone else? Counselor Cadeau.
I'm just kind of looking ahead in the budget, and I was wondering if you could provide some context into the facility Wi-Fi project. I know that it's slated for 40,000 in 2026, with another 20 in 27 and another 20 in 28. What does that entail?
So what that is in, starting in 2016, we did a 4-year project that would basically implemented Wi-Fi throughout all the facilities. So when we get up to 2026, now those items are 10 years old, and will no longer be supported by with support or even firmware updates. So it's a time of, we need to refresh all this, get newer equipment in, assess what the requirements are, to encourage or to see if there are, you know, capacity improvements. We've already done some capacity improvements at the WMC this past year, just with relating to user groups and also in preparation for the 2025 hockey championships that we're co-hosting with the university. So those are the types of things that it's that, you know, they can only go so long before the vendor themselves will stop supporting it. They become end of life, end of support, all that kind of thing. So, so that's what that is for. Yeah.
Counselor Bryant.
Thank you. Through you to the clerk or whoever. Under the funding method, I noticed we're pulling the water reserve fund and the sewer reserve fund for $25,000 each. Why are we tapping those two funds for IT?
Yeah, through you, Mayor Shantz. I can answer that. So the financial software that we're looking at purchasing also handles our water and wastewater accounts. So we're looking at those two reserve funds as a funding method, as well as the large portion of that provincial federal grants is also there to support the financial software package.
Anything else? Okay, thank you. So we're done a little bit earlier than our schedule had anticipated. Let me just have a moment with Jeff and we'll talk about where to go from here. Okay, we're scheduled to go into closed. We were going to do that a little bit later, but I think we've got time now. So if I could have a motion that the Council of the Township of Woolwich convenes in closed session on Thursday, January 25th, 2024, in accordance with Section 239 of the Municipal Act for the purposes of considering the following. Proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality or local board, and that would be a property matter. Personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees. A personnel matter and personal matters about this is the exact same wording, an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees. Another personnel matter. Mover, Councillor Grant, Councillor Bryant, all those in favor, and that's carried. Thank you. So we'll take a moment to go into closed and we'll deal with those. Thanks.